European Union states are determined to prevent uncontrolled migration from Afghanistan following the takeover of the Taliban. EU governments are eager to avoid a repeat of the chaotic influx of refugees and migrants in 2015 that caught the bloc unprepared and sowed divisions among them, fueling support for far-right parties as camps in Greece, Italy and elsewhere swelled. The International Rescue Committee says the EU should create a new scheme to resettle at least 30,000 Afghans from the region in the next 12 months. The charity estimated there were already 2.6 million Afghan refugees, mainly hosted by Iran and Pakistan. Let's get more reaction from the United Kingdom and Europe. We cross to our correspondent John Bevir in London. A very good afternoon, John. 20 years later, UK troops also leaving Afghanistan. Tell us more.
Yeah, absolutely. We have seen the end of a conflict that has dominated foreign policy here for the last 2 decades. The UK, of course, was heavily involved in the Afghan war. Over 450 UK service personnel paid the ultimate price and died in Afghanistan. Many hundreds, if not thousands more, were wounded as well. But here we are now, a new week and a new era where the UK is looking at Afghanistan from the outside and looking in. The UK has ceased its operations there a day before the US did. They have airlifted out many hundreds of people. Many of those used to work for the UK within Afghanistan, whether that was translation services or working at the embassy or things like that. But now, of course, we are looking at the wider problem and the issue of refugees. There are many thousands of them already here, and across the world there are many millions, as you said. And now the issue really is what can be done to really help those who need it most.
John, let's stay on the issue of migration. What is the foremost concern, and are there any countries which are particularly loud about their refusal or concern about migration?
Well, as you said, it's Iran and Pakistan have got a huge number of Afghan migrants. There's somewhere in the region of 2.2 million, they think, are already in Iran and Pakistan, have gone there from Afghanistan. So there is a very urgent, pressing issue of what the world can do to help those people. But of course, the fear is that there will be many millions more following now that we have this regime change and this terror, as we've been hearing about, and people who fear for their lives trying to leave. So now the big issue is how can we help these people? But also Europe is looking to see how can we make this fair. A lot of people are looking back at the migrant crisis of 2015, where the vast majorities were Syrians. A lot of those ended up in Greece and Turkey, a very dangerous crossing to get there. And of course, when they're there, then a huge amount of resources have to be expended to keep those people safe, to keep them fed, to make sure they're healthy. So Turkey has been saying it doesn't want everything to fall on its shoulders again. What we're going to see today with the EU is they're going to release a statement, of which has basically already been released to the press. And that statement is going to say that based on lessons learned, the EU and its member states stand determined to act in a joint manner, to work together to try and deal with this huge looming issue that is only going to get worse over the coming months.
All right, so we've spoken about the war and the withdrawal. What is United Kingdom Prime Minister Boris Johnson saying about possible diplomatic ties or interactions with the Taliban going forward?
Well, yeah, this is the big question, isn't it? At the moment, what Boris Johnson has been saying, and it's been echoed by senior members of the government here as well, is that the Taliban have to keep their word. And of course, that is a big issue, isn't it? Someone who has been your enemy for 20 years, all of a sudden you are relying on them to keep their word. And obviously what we've seen with this devastating suicide attack is that there are factions as well, and that it's making things very difficult. But it's all about whether the Taliban keep their word and allow people to leave the country who are able to leave the country. So people who've got the magic piece of paper from the UK, from the US, from another European country, if they've got the magic piece of paper saying they're allowed to leave, well, are they going to be allowed to leave without any issues from the Taliban? Are they simply going to be allowed to pack up their lives and go? That is the first test. And if that test is passed, then of course there needs to be some sort of dialogue. You can't simply leave a country and sever all ties. We have already seen that this very much is being discussed as an absolute disaster of a foreign policy initiative. We've seen the Pentagon seeming to blame the UK in terms of the suicide bombing, saying that various gates at the airport were still open to help the UK extract more people. The Pentagon are saying maybe that's why so many US service personnel died. They maybe would have shut the gates and walked away. So we've got all these issues from all these different sides. Everyone is very tense, and the next few weeks and months are going to be crucial in working out what sort of relationship the rest of the world has with Afghanistan going forward.
Give us a sense of the sentiment in the United Kingdom from people who are away from government and who are not involved closely but are part of that country about the war and what happened in Afghanistan.
Yeah, well, I was speaking to a friend of mine actually who was a soldier. He served in Afghanistan. His brother actually died in Afghanistan as well, and speaking to him, and he's been putting various posts on social media about his feelings about it, and he very much believes that it was worthwhile because of what the UK managed to achieve, what their allies managed to achieve in that time, that there's a generation of young girls who were given the opportunity to go to school, to go to university, to have some sort of freedom. Of course, nobody's happy with how it's ended, and there will be plenty of people who look back at this and describe it as an absolute disaster in terms of how the pullout occurred, how things were happening. But yeah, talking to people who've been heavily involved in the Afghan conflict, then I think a lot of them are sad. I think they are sad that this is how it's ended, that, as I say, more than 450 UK service personnel died in Afghanistan, many more injured, and what we now have is a mess, and that things really could have been so much better, but it really is just a case of waiting to see how things progress over the coming weeks.
John Bevir, correspondent in London, thanks so much for that update on SABC News this afternoon.